to learn how to deconstruct without allowing deconstruction to devastate or destroy. By which I mean that analysis is never a bad idea. I think analysis can come in the way of creativity if you allow it to overtake instinct. But if you allow it to live side by side with instinct and with some processes that are part of your growing up, that are part of your bloodstream, that are part of your DNA, and perhaps can't be analyzed and can't be deconstructed, then I think the two help to build. But if you allow a constant analytical mode to keep entering and stopping the creative flow or the creative juice, then it becomes a barrier and a wall. And very often what happens is that kind of self-criticism actually stems the leap into the unknown that you need to take for art.
Absolutely.
You know, what I felt was that actually looking at the film after Sumantra had made it, even for me, it was an eye-opener. You know, because
Right.
I didn't realize that there was so much articulation that had taken place. You know, when you say, because he asked those very penetrating kind of questions, which makes one sort of release, you know, the ideas from within. Also, I feel that when we have this kind of deconstruction, you know, if you keep it only in the sphere of knowledge, you know, if it's only a mental thing like, oh, X, Y, Z, so many things happen, I think that's very restrictive. But what it actually does when we analyze it is it takes you towards feeling. I think it moves you towards feeling. And then there is a certain appreciation or increase in appreciation of a detail, which you might have missed otherwise.
Right.
You know, and as I said, what was really good about this film, I think, is it does deal with the creative process. So it's like saying, what are all those capillaries of ideas and thoughts and feelings and processes for me, for Sumantra, for the whole thing to come together. And, you know, of course, we haven't deconstructed it in great detail because then we'd have to make another few films on the same topic. But yes, I think it's important to let people in. But as Sumantra was saying, it's a question of proportion. You know, how much do you open out,
Right,
to make it informative and you know, educative, and something about dance dissemination. I think it's so critical these days to really have that.
I think I'm sort of confusing the words analytical and deconstruction, because I think deconstruction only happens after a work is complete, whereas analysis happens while a work is in process. So perhaps I haven't quite answered your question, but what I want to say is that deconstruction somehow within it subsumes the idea of an intellectual attitude to a piece of work.
yes.
And I feel that is very important as you're progressing with the work. As I'm saying, it should not overtake the emotional or the instinctive. But I feel what that does is that it does something which is very critical to art, and which is sometimes lost in work because you get trapped by how much you've invested in the work. And what that does, the analytical bit, is it gives you structure. And I feel most things fall on the level of structure, not necessarily on the level of dancing or on the level of mudras or on the level of bhava necessarily, but it's not structured. It's not structured in a way that holds all of those things together and creates an edifice.
Yeah, true. And to the point of analysis and deconstruction, I think both are equally necessary. I think, especially, I'm sure Malavika, in your career, there have been so many times you've probably taken stock of what you want to do, and then go back and forth, because that's how I would assume we all grow. And without that, it's sort of that introspection and reflection kind of then holds us back, right? And it sort of becomes stagnant. And where is the thing? And I'm sure even in your filmmaking process, and that it's always different things also inspire you and then make you analyze really what you wanted to say, or what that scene might have wanted to say, sort of connecting the dots.
I think there's a lot of, a work is actually never complete in a sense. Like even now, when I came on a little earlier on and I was seeing the film, and I must have seen it umpteen times by now in several screenings and elsewhere. And I just felt, oh my God, I could have said something else, or, there's the other detail which I haven't really brought out. So I think a work is really never complete in a way, because you're always visiting it, and each time you see it or each time you dance it. I mean, if I take a work which I created, say, 5 years ago, there's too much change which has already happened in it. It's complete at that point of time for some time, but then it's not complete. So I think it's over life. I mean, it's just, it's passage, it's flow. So we're constantly, renewing even earlier work or creating new work.
Right.
Which is what I think that is the creative flow, I think it's quite an adventure.
Yes, never a dull moment, I bet. So I have to admit, what I really liked about the movie, which is probably also true in the life of a dancer, is that we have to share the vulnerability and like kind of bare ourselves on stage, while also like holding back something for ourselves, right? Like when we're on stage, and that's the kind of feeling I got with the film too. Like there was this sense of intimacy, there was this proximity to you, but also there's so much that's unsaid, and there's so much enigma. I mean, not enigma per se, but like there's so much there that we can also spend time thinking about. And this is actually the third time I'm watching the movie, and each time I watch it, there are other things I'm getting to see or notice that I didn't previously. So I want to know from both of you, so how did this come about, and how did this kind of storyboarding happen, and how did this journey of this unseen happen, basically?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I think we took a year or so to shoot this, different times of the year. And Sumantri was also always keen that, I should not perform for the camera.
Mm.
It's not like a staged performance, and he'll speak more about it. So it was really quite a process over a period of time. And I think that is what, and I actually did not know his story, his narrative at all. I didn't know it at all.
Wow.
I only saw it finally when he said he's completed, and he was willing to screen it for a very few friends who saw it. So I actually didn't know how he developed it. So Sumantri should speak about it.
I think I have a very strange way of working, which is why I make so few films, apart from being lazy. Storyboarding is not part of how I go about making a film, since you use that word.
Right.
Because storyboarding suggests that you know in advance where you're headed. And though I know what my goal posts are and where they are, I don't know where I'm headed. So it's a terrifying journey, but exciting. And which is one of the reasons I don't show my work in progress, even to the people who are involved. I made a film on Zakir, the Tabla Maestro. He never saw the film until I showed it to him. I made a film on Kaifi Azmi for his daughter, Shabana. I didn't show Shabana or Javed the film until it was written. Because I fear that if I don't know how I'm dealing with the problems and where I'm headed actually, actually I know where I'm headed, but how am I getting there? Then I feel hesitant showing the work because I feel that there are so many things that are going on in my head every day, 24 hours a day for the year or 2 years that I take to make a film, which are inexpressible, but which are important for me to grapple with and solve, that I find that it's very difficult for me to have an analytical conversation with somebody who's just reacting to a work in progress because they don't know the connections I have still to make. Right. I'm beginning to make in the process of making. And I feel it all gets very confused. And then we get into, I feel we get into argument and into, holding on to positions with something that's not ready, with something it's like discussing which school your fetus is going to go to and what should be his job in life or her job in life. It's still a work in progress. Let the thing be born. So that's how I go about my work, and that's how I went about it. I knew that there would be 3 stories. There would be the story of the dance itself. There would be the story of Malavika Sarukkai, who's one of the major and important exponents of that dance.
Right.
And there would be, in fact, which is not true of my film on Zakir in a sense, nor on Kefi, it would be my journey as well. It would be a journey of somebody who's discovering a dance and a language and an idiom and an expression that he has no clue about. And I felt that my journey would be similar to that of many people, or my discoveries would be the same as that of many people in the audience. And so I felt that I was, in a sense, their representative in the film, asking their questions, looking at it with their eyes. But I also felt that these 3 stories needed to meld, needed to come together in a non-separate, they shouldn't be in silos. They needed to blend and be a stream, right, not separate wells. So that's how I went about it. It's a long answer to a short question.
So coming back to you, so you trusted the process entirely? And you had no doubts in the 1 year of filming?
I trusted
no,
her. Did she trust
Malavika.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's how it was, because our interactions and, when we spoke, what I really truly appreciated about the way Sumantra makes his films is, I never felt watched in this film. I never felt I had to put on something to communicate this film. We like put on a persona because we feel we're being filmed, etc. It was the most natural and comfortable process. So, it would just go on. We'd meet off and on during that year. It was a very difficult year actually for me because my mother wasn't well that year. So it was emotionally a very, very stressful year. But somehow, dance kept me buoyant somewhere. When we met, I always felt enthusiastic. I felt I wanted to speak about dance. And so I just left it. I completely trusted Sumanta. And I'm so glad that I did. And I'm so glad for the surprise he gave me when the film was born. I was absolutely surprised. I was overwhelmed. Because, I was overwhelmed because it spoke about dance. It just spoke about the fabric of dance. I think that is more important than, all our little achievements of what we do or we don't do. But as it focused on dance itself, I think it was just a wonderful surprise. Yeah, I just feel he should make more films on dance, but that's another topic.
But I agree, you should just make more films, period. But what I think it was really beneficial to all of us that you were an uninitiated, when you were uninitiated in the art form, because it gave us this very different perspective into it. Like if it were already a dancer to make this movie, they would have had these preconceived things to ask you to do certain things, and this was sort of untouched in that way. Like you let him have creative journey on its own. What you did was just you. It wasn't what he wanted to contrive as you. And I think that worked really well, and that kind of totally played off in the way the movie works and comes along. And I think my favorite scene is you speaking to your mother and asking her what she liked, what are the roles she liked to play. That was such a a sweet, tender moment. And it was like you said, it was so natural that obviously it happened and it was just captured, and it was very sweet. So what are your favorite snaps and snippets in the movie?
You're asking me?
Yes, first you and then.
Oh, I don't know. I think many parts have so many resonances, whether it was the starting of the film in Chidambaram, which was again, just so, it was so intimate and yet public, and it was such a vulnerable time, even to shoot this film. There were so many moments, again, as you said, with my mother. I don't know, it's difficult, or Astam Gato Ravihi, because that was actually the first time I danced when Sumantra was filming. It was quite he just came, he had come with his crew. It was a very small crew. Came into Chennai and said, what would you like to start dancing? And I said, okay, what I'm feeling very close to right now is this piece. I love it dearly and I'd like to dance it. So I think every piece has its own, I don't know, memories. Matter of fact, when I looked at it this time and I saw our master tailor, Ayulu, again on film, it was precious, Kalanidhi Mami, speaking. So how does one choose, really, Shruti? It's difficult. Everything is so sort of layered with so many associations.
Right.
Yeah, it's difficult.
I bet even as we go through this conversation tonight, I will also find more scenes I'll repeat after. So I'm sure you have even more. So how about you? Do you have any favorite one that stands out?
I don't know about favorite, but what I like, strange to be talking about one's own film and say what I like, but I'll continue since you asked me that question.
I mean, we all say with the children, right? I mean, we don't have, but we can say sometimes.
The thing I like is when a sequence or an image has subtext, which the audience perhaps doesn't get, but which I know has been invested, and therefore a sensitive audience will get it, or a repeat viewing will get it. Now, when you talk about the relationship between Malavika and her mother, for me, I've never talked about this, not even to Malavika. For me, the most striking moment of that relationship is not the conversation, right, because that is normal, and there's no subtext to that conversation. But there is a moment in the start of the film where Malavika is practicing, rehearsing, and she comes to her mother as a bird. And she says to her mother, I am a bird. And her mother holds her and kisses her. Now that's probably 10 seconds long. But for me, it is the whole relationship in 10 seconds of film. It is about a mother letting her daughter become a bird, fly away from her, and yet holding her close when she comes back to her, to give her all the love and all the grace and all the shelter that she needs. For me, these are moments in film that perhaps nobody will take out in the way that I am seeing it when I'm editing, and I'm seeing it as a seed I'm planting for what I'm going to go to towards the end of the film. Right. So that's what I mean by analysis and structure.
Right.
That scene, many people have said, what is this? Why is it? But for me, it is essential because it captures a moment, a relationship, and is a seed, which will grow into what you will see as a tree. So that moment, I'll give you one other, which for me is again, has more depth than what you may perhaps notice. which is the gong. Now, if you look at the gong, I have not gone to a close-up of Malavika in the gong. It's done in a long shot. What does that long shot hold? It holds the gong, it holds the image of the Buddha, and it holds an empty wooden two-seater or three-seater on the right side of the screen. And for me, that image is the source for her, which is God. There is her and the gong, which is riyaz and practice and dance. And there is that empty seat, which is the audience. Now, nobody will read that image in this way, but it was intentional and it was there. And these things give me some amount of joy because they're not underlined. There are no exclamation marks.
Right.
There are no prompts to the audience which says, look how clever I am. And yet for me, these have depth. And if you look at it at the moment at which it appears, it has more meaning than what you're watching. That gives me joy. So that's rare.
Yeah.
I wish there was more of that.
No, but I think that's why this film worked. And that's why I think, because that's how Akka's choreography is. There'll be things like, even when you were talking about it, when you said you picked up the tail and you had this moment of revelation, and that's for the audience, they don't see that journey you've been through, and they're not seeing it the way you have, like just now how you described the whole gong scene. I did think of, when I saw the scene, I thought maybe it's because of the life, like it was, you're in this larger area, sort of. That's what I thought. I didn't think of that as an audience and her. So I put my own interpretation into that scene. But I guess just like that, right? Like it's always art's up to the. It's kind of subjective. It's like whoever's watching and what they're feeling in that moment. They're feeling that, is sharing that experience at that moment, right? The same moment it's something else, next moment it might be some other shared experience. So I think that's just so beautiful. As an art viewer, as an artist, I think that's the joy of it, I guess. So the next question, you kind of sort of answered it in earlier in the conversation, but just to get more into that, it's so how did the process of making this movie impact you, your artistry, and then did it change the way you thought of you and your dance? And did you make any, I mean, this is 2013, so since then, have you put in work that's sort of reflective of your introspections after watching your own self in this movie?
Well, as I said, when I saw this film, I actually realized I articulate a lot if needed. Dance is such a intimate feeling space. You know, there's so many things we think about. There's so many sort of layers of ideas and associations which feed a choreography. But I think by seeing the film Sumantra made, I realized that actually I do articulate a lot if I'm asked. You know, if I'm asked to sort of open up a piece, there is actually a lot which has gone into it. So I found it interesting to know about it.
Right.
To see myself actually articulating, that was an interesting process to actually see myself articulating. But I won't say that the film has changed the way I create work or, you know, the way I conceptualize work, because I mean, that is a long story which goes on.
Right.
But I definitely feel that film, especially if we have a very sensitive and an informed and intelligent director like Sumantra making a film on dance, I think it brought alive and it forefronted what this medium can do. You know, when two artistic mediums actually come together, what can we create? For me, that was a whole new space I entered, which I had never thought about quite so. I hadn't really envisioned it, but it provided this absolutely new vista, and say, oh my God, there's so many possibilities. Because that kind of, it's one thing to be in and just see a performance or to see an artist experiencing the dance, but it's quite another matter to be taken into the dance by another artist through this other medium, and then see what is revealed, which you have not seen before. So dance continues. Obviously, I've created a lot of work since 2013.
Right.
And the process of, multi-layering, the process of a concept which can be actually shaded in different ways, the work on saying the technique of the body, the whole body language, the technique of detailing. I mean, that is a continuous, that goes on forever. And there's no end because we keep on discovering more. And that is really the fascination of diving deep. And I would urge dancers, there's so many of dancers all around the world, so many practicing Bharatanatyam in particular. I would urge them to say, like technique is difficult, is very difficult to get technique, to work the body, to make sure it's going in alignment and symmetry and harmony. All those are really very, very difficult. But if we can just keep pushing further, when one dives deep, it is just so remarkable because there is so much. It's like treasures, we find. Yesterday, I was practicing 2 hours in the morning, and a piece I've done for the last year. It's a new work I'm creating. But I know that the more I dance, the more detailing I find. There's something I didn't know 2 days ago, which just glimmered to me yesterday, just a wee bit. So that is the excitement which says, keep going. And don't be comfortable with the shallows. So I would urge people to dive deep. Yes.
That's so beautiful. I'm still processing what you said, and but so how do you choose like which theme to work on? And so is that your preference to now performing Amargam? I mean, so what inspires you to pick the theme? So what's your process basically for that?
Initially I had done at Brad. Obviously, I learned the Margam from my gurus, and I performed it extensively. So I think I must have done at least 20 years of Margam, of and working with esteemed gurus like Rajotam Sir, Kalyan Sundram Play, and Kalanidhi Mami. So that was a whole. It was like a world for me, which was so full of the best of training from these very eminent gurus. But after a point of time, after this 20 years, when you start questioning the work you do, you question why you do something. What does it mean? What does it convey? What is it you're communicating? Then questions arise. When questions arise, you start looking around your world. And then you find that there are many things outside the Margam, at least for me, these things like it was compelling for me to do a piece like on Hanuman was compelling. It was a compelling choice. But it was a great risk because I don't know how to actually find Hanuman within me. I know how to find a Naika. I know how to find a Nayak. I know these because I've done it for 20 years. I'm familiar, I have a vocabulary, I have a kind of grammar all planned around it, and variations. Of course, one can always expand that continues. But doing a character of trying to become or a character like Hanuman requires like great risk and great faith that you can somehow find something. So my impulses to create work outside the Margam have had to be inspiration. Something has had to like hit me so hard that I can't not do it, that I feel I have to create it. And then I go about trying to find the language, like in the film, like Sumantra has, spoken about it also, and, opened it up, the Mahishasura Mardini.
Right.
making the connections between sculpture and dance, the interrelatedness of the arts. So then a whole lot of other things come in. But the impulse has to be a fire which you cannot put down. And then you say, yes, I have to go in this direction and create this.
So how do you pick your movie themes? You worked with Zakir Hussain, you made the Asmi movie. So what inspires you? And even the other movies, like the space between the notes. So you're seeking all the unseen sort of things. So how does that inspire? I mean, like, how does that happen? How did that happen?
Well, I think they pick me, actually, the subjects. As I said, I'm very lazy in the sense that I don't originate work too much. People who I work with tend then to want to work with me, silly people. And I therefore proceed and get more work that way. Now, for example, I used to make commercials. So I made a commercial with Zakir, and which was for a Taj tea brand. And then what happened is that we got talking, and I realized that there was no film on him at all, zero. And I knew that what happened. This was 25 years ago, and what happened then is that you had to be at least 82 years old and drooling from your mouth before people decided that they would give you a Padma Shri and they would make a film on you. And I didn't, and I felt that that was a crime that a talent like that, at the height of his prowess, with lots more to come, is not being documented, is not being analyzed, it's not being set down forever in a way. Forever is a big word, but set down on film, which is more forever than we are. So that started off my journey into the arts. And then I waited 6 years, I waited 20 years, I think, or God knows how many years before I made the film on Malavika. And the way that worked is that friends brought us together. I didn't know anything about dance and I didn't know her. So I didn't go to her and say, hey, you're a decent dancer, let's make a film. No, that's not how it happened. We met and we talked, and I talked like hell, and she got very put off and decided not to work with me, I think. And then friends told her, no, he's okay. He won't do a bad job. And that film got made. And Shabana had seen my film on Zakir 20 years ago. And she came back to me 20 years later and said, it's my father's 100th anniversary. Will you make the film? And I said, without thinking, yes. Without knowing Urdu, without knowing her father, without really knowing that period. So I don't choose anything. And Zakir came back to me and said, hey, I'm doing a concert in Ladri. Will you make a film on it? And I said, okay. And then what happens is that I don't follow any briefs. So Zakir had told me to make a certain film, and I said to him, look, I can't make that film. If you want me to make a film, I'll make my own. He said, okay, fine. So that's how it works, which is why it is rare that I make a film. But it's hugely enjoyable. It's terrifying, it's enjoyable, it's exciting. It teaches me the best things that I've learned in my life are from taking these journeys. Because I enter territories and areas that I know nothing about. And I come out knowing nothing, but having gained a lot, if that makes sense.
Yes. So I'm going to just address the questions that have come up as we've been speaking. Kashi Ayasola says, Balaka, now that we're in a world of mainly virtual interaction, many dancers are trying to adapt and create for the screen. What are your thoughts on creating dance works, performances to present virtually? What has that experience been like for you?
But I think actually dancers would possibly have more answers to this, because they've probably worked with this virtual screen and creating performances for that. If I had to just say dance speak, I would say that, if dance is dance in essence, if it had everything about it as you would present it for a stage performance, I think if it can embody that energy, that quality, I think then it can be, transferred. If you see it in a virtual medium, it still kind of brings through some part of it. I am of the firm belief that, dance has to be seen live in real time, in person. That is its primary function. That is where it lives completely. For the moment, for the rasika, for the general public, for the artist, for the making of dance, for the absorption of what you find in the performance, the experience of it. I think that sense of experience somehow, which I believe is vital for dance, and definitely classical dance, and definitely Bharatanatyam that I speak about, that needs to be in person. That needs to be in person. But now, given the world, given this strange, I don't know, surreal time we're all living in, it can go out into the virtual medium, but I think it has to be done with great attention. I think I think a lot has to be done also about how you film it for this. I think then the whole thing of another medium comes in. Does just a one camera setup, is it enough? I'm not sure. I don't think it can capture the energy which is actually happening on stage is difficult. So if there's enough funding, if there's enough sort of real creative people coming together, I think why not? A lot can happen. But we need a creative team for the best of the best. But what I would say ask dancers to do is, like, if the dance itself can really hold its own and speak, because getting everything together might be really quite a stupendous act, to get everything together. But I think what they should concentrate on is their own dance, and not worry about how it's coming across. I keep saying, often dancers are always thinking about how does this dance look, if they do a new movement, it's easy to say how does it look. I would say, can we change that and say how does it feel?
Yeah.
How does dance feel? And I think if we can move in that trajectory of pushing intensity, I think we probably get better dancing out, and more authentic dancing out, which is just not performative. And I believe that kind of authentic dancing would also come through more vibrant for a digital space. I don't know if that answers Kasi's, question, but these are my thoughts on it.
Thank you. So there's some comments here. Our board treasurer, Lakshmi Babu, she just wrote one word, spellbound, because I guess that kind of encompasses all that she's feeling at this moment. And then Daya Ravi, another IDEA member, she said, what a wonderful expression of a dancer, well captured, subtly yet communicative. I like the chaos, noise outside, yet being in your space when you were dancing at the Chidambaram temple. And there's another question from Ahalya. She says, thank you so much for offering this discussion and screening. Would you both be willing to discuss your current projects, if any? Also, perhaps how you feel about making art in these times during the pandemic?
Well, I think we've both been working at different, at the moment, we're both, Sumanta and me, we are working on a new project, which we've been working through last year. Hopefully when things, improve in India and things stabilize and people feel safe, we'll be able to present it. It's been actually difficult working in this kind of, distanced way. Because earlier on, Sumanta and me have actually collaborated on another work of mine, which I did called Tari the Loom, which was an ensemble piece, which was, I think, some 2-3 years ago. And what was great then was, Sumanta would come down for our rehearsals. It was ensemble. There were so many dancers. And there was just the excitement of conversation, and, before the rehearsal, after the rehearsal. and everything was so kind of organic and exciting, to be, because one is so immersed in the work that you want to have discussions and want to, have questions also thrown at you so that you actually sharpen the way you think about the work. And that was how we had worked on Thari, The Loom. And also we had worked together on another production called The Battle Within, which was on the Bhagavad Gita. Again, that was a solo production, which I did 2 years ago. So we had very different experiences of working together. This time it's been difficult because I've been sitting in Chennai and Sumantra's in Mumbai. So that the chemistry of like direct interactions, spontaneous interactions, we've missed, but we have managed, and we are still creating work, and it's very exciting. So I practice in isolation in my dance, Ambalam, if I can call it that, and it grows, but it's a different kind of, it's a much more lonely journey this time, much more lonely journey. But, being creative, I think, is the only thing which has kept me going through the last year and this year. Because I think when we dance, there's a certain energy that we release within ourselves, and that keeps the mind. It's not only a physical, feeling warmed up and being able to perform, etc. But it's a deeper centering, which has kept me going. So I'm just thankful to being able to create and still wanting to create, the excitement to create, that spandha, that enthusiasm, that utsaha, something that you want to create, which has really kept me going. But yes, I've missed our personal interactions. I don't know about Sumantra, how he's managing in Mumbai. Yeah.
I think like everyone else, one is dealing with something that is inescapable. So you can't escape it, so you deal with it. But, I discovered some time ago that I have a wide range of interests, and probably I'm quite a dilettante. So I haven't restricted myself to working only with film.
Okay.
I am making a series of films on individual artworks for a museum in Bangalore called MAP, the Museum of Art and Photography. And I've just finished 4 films, one on Bhupen Khakkar, one on Mrinalini Mukherjee, one on Manjeet Bawa, and one on Tayyib Mehta. So that takes me into a world I didn't, again, know, which is the world of art. But I have not, as I said, restricted myself to film. I decided one is now old enough to be uncaring and foolish. And so I have moved into other areas. I work with Malavika on her new dance projects, as long as she'll have me around. But she's not got tired of me in about 6 years. So we've worked on 2 projects already and are working on the 3rd together. It's a complicated way of working, so I won't go into that, but it's great for, I think, both of us, because I bring a certain energy and a certain analysis that I think she benefits from, and she brings all the emotion and actually all the original thinking for that performance. And I just help her find her way if I feel that she's getting a bit lost in her own creativity. So it's a strange working relationship, which nobody can quite understand since I know nothing about dance, but it's working. I'm also involved, again, as I said, this is something that came to me. I didn't seek it, but Javed Akhtar came to me and said, will you translate my father's poetry? And I said, okay. So I've translated Janisar Akhtar's poetry. That's Javed Akhtar's father. Javed Akhtar, of course, is a very well-known poet, lyricist, screenwriter in Bombay.
Right.
And that will come out as a book this year.
Okay.
So I've got I do many things that keeps me, I hope, away from Alzheimer's, which otherwise would have been my lot by now.
Actually, there's a follow-up to that question from Mahalya. Will there be a film of the ensemble piece that you both are creating right now?
No, we are not creating an ensemble piece.
Okay.
Yeah,
that was created 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
I actually watched the Thari here at the Kennedy Center when you, yes.
Good.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So there are a couple more questions. Smita Jairam asked, Malavika ji, I want to know if dance is a meditation to you. When you are doing everyday stuff, do you still feel dance in it and live it?
I would say that dance has changed the way I look at life. If that is an answer to this, I mean, it's just changed many things. The way I observe life, the way I perceive life, the way I interact with life. So in that sense, yes, I mean, dance is, it's not something you can do when you just go into studio. It's not something you can just like grasp and say, okay, right now I'm a dancer. And then you walk out of the studio, then you become something else. It really is impossible because after a point of time when you've done it really and you work, and you've been internalizing the dance for so many decades, that it's just so much a part of you, it just seeps into you that you can't, it defines so many things about yourself. And then unconsciously, you just know that that's how you're observing life. It's just changed. And actually, you're glad that it's changed because I think when we, when we are with dance really close, I think we are more empathetic as people. We learn how to be empathetic. And I think that's a wonderful aspect. I think that's brought a lot of learning into my life in many ways. So yeah, dance is all around. I don't know how to separate
it. Chandani Shah says, it is so powerful to consider how dynamic these art forms are and our perspectives, such that you may notice different moments in the film routinely. If you were to make a sequel to the film now, after all these years, what would you want to show to the world?
I don't know, it's a difficult question because artists are not stagnant, we hope. And therefore, things have happened in their lives right now. I think Corona has informed a lot of how we think, what we think about, how we express ourselves. So many things have happened since 2013 when this film was made. It's been 8 years. And one would do certain things. I'm not sure I would do anything so differently for the film I've made, but obviously one would approach a sequel with the idea that there is something already there, which is why it's a sequel, which would automatically be different from something when there was nothing there. And therefore sequels must bear that in mind, that they have a legacy, that they have something, that they are a furtherance, not a start of a journey. So one would do it with that idea primarily in one's head. The thing is, I don't want to make sequels. So I wouldn't be interested because I feel that one invests so much in the work itself that I feel that perforce there would be repetitiveness. And I don't want that to happen. I'd much rather leap into a territory that is unknown. And therefore be able to be terrified. I wouldn't be as terrified if I was making a sequel because I've spent so much time now with Malavika, seeing her work, understanding the process, that I think it would in fact not be as exciting, the sequel for me, because I think so many discoveries have gone into the unseen sequence for me that brings a certain excitement in itself. Right. I'm not saying that a sequel wouldn't work, but I'm saying that it wouldn't be as exciting for me as the original was. People have said to me, you made a film on Zakir 25 years ago. He's done so much since. Why aren't you making another film? And I know that Zakir would be perfectly happy if I decided to proceed with it. I'm speaking on his behalf without checking with him. But I don't want to. I mean, I feel that now I want to do something new, something different. So I don't know what that is, but it's not a sequel.
As an audience member, though, I think it's because it's so much about the process. And like you were saying, it's about the dance and the deconstruction, that it's not something that it's not like, okay, Malavika in 2030, now Malavika at 2021. It's more your life's journey that kind of unfolded rather than certain timestamps. I mean, that's what I felt. I mean, I don't know if you felt any different from that.
No, I think it is about, it is a journey. And I'm sure, actually, Sumanta keeps saying that he is lazy, but please don't believe that, because he's the last person who's lazy. He's an extremely hardworking, very conscientious filmmaker who does a hell of a lot of research before he gets into any subject. And I think it's differently to him, because I think, there's so much that has happened in my life, in his life, in the way he thinks of film, the way I think of dance. There could be more adventure.
Right.
There could be, and there could be adventure into different spaces where neither of us have been before, like we did in the first film. But who knows, but these things have to come together when the time is right, Things happen,
Right.
and mind has to be, we must feel that need to make it. Otherwise, there's no point really. It must be compelling to make it. But in the meantime, we will create productions.
Awesome. Yeah, I just wanted to add that I just thought his comment of laziness was self-deprecating humor. I did not attribute it to a skill of any sort.
No, when I get into a project, I work very hard, but I don't motivate myself that much. Otherwise, I would have made more films.
So the other question I have for you, Malavika, is Bharatanatyam has been your life. Would you have had it any other way? Or was there any other burning career you might have had or you ever think about?
Not really, ever. It's never been a conflict. Never been. The only conflict, I think it was because in my early 20s, was it then, when I was also doing a lot of presenting Odissi performances. And, that I was working very hard on Odissi and Bharatanatyam. So then there was this thing of, which style and how much time can I spend on, either of the art forms. And then at one point, Odissi fell away. And it seemed to, it just released me of the pressure of having to perform it. So it was good. I didn't, it happened for many reasons, but afterwards I was glad it happened, because it just let me be with Bharatanatyam. And there really is just so much to discover. There is, and there's so much of delight. There's just this, it's just a kind of innocent delight of finding a movement, finding a gesture, finding a little something in your technique. And then, of course, as one deepens one's study, there is a whole area of philosophy, and how does philosophy also impact the dance? Like a piece like Sthiti Gati, which I did at the end. And here again, I really want to just put on record the great regard I have for Professor C.V. Chandrasekhar, and for the amount of contribution in terms of music that he has given for so many of my pieces. To find a senior artist like him who, who welcomes, thinking out of the box, who welcomes, and, it doesn't put hurdles before, and he gives us music, and he has contributed greatly to my exploration, because without him to create the music, I might not have gone on those so many journeys that I did. So it's, no, dance, Bharatanatyam is like first love, continues to be passionate about it. It's just fabulous. It's just fabulous.
I totally agree. So you talk about this stillness and this philosophical journey. when did that occur for you?
These things, Shruti, I mean, it's over a period of time. My mother was studied philosophy. So I grew up in an environment when there were these conversations. She'd always be talking to me about the things she read.
Mm-hmm.
So it was part of the way I grew up. So then sometimes that seed, you hear something and the seed drops, and then after some time you find, it's actually like it's sprouting. There's something more to it, and then you follow it, so it hasn't been a conscious design that I have to work on this or that. It's just ideas and also the reading. One has to do a lot of research. But I would say the most important thing and the most difficult part of creating is not only conceptualizing. Conceptualizing, yes, of course, we require creativity. But the real test, which has been a great test for me and a great learning, is how can I, from a concept, how do I translate it into dance? How do I find the language to move that concept into dance, especially when I'm working out of the margam? When, as I said, in the margam, we have a certain familiarity, comfort level, etc. And we know we've done so many pieces and so many compositions that we're familiar. When we move out of it, we are coming into new terrain, like we haven't walked that space before. So we might have a very exciting concept, but do we have the language, the wherewithal, the creativity, the technique to change that, to translate that and say, now I make it dance?
Right.
That is really a critical stage, and which I feel dancers can't get to that by just using hastas. It's not there. The answer is not there. The answer is many layers below. So you have to dig very deep to find those answers. But if you do, then yes, new concepts and the ability to create, and finding, new space for dance, new space for a language of gesture, new space for a traditional art form, which has when I by traditional, I'm saying grammar, punctuation and all the vocabulary, etc., structures. Right. But I think that's something dancers need to look at.
Yeah. And I've
struggled with it too. I continue to struggle. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's hard, lonely work. When you're by yourself in your studio, you have a concept and you say, okay, how am I going to do it? How do I work? It's tedious sometimes, but exciting when you find an answer.
Right. But I think the key thing is time, investing the time.
No, I don't. Investing time, obviously investing time, but the key thing is digging deep. Right. Because the answer is not on the surface.
Yeah.
It's not a melo-term. It's not floating there in the surface, which you can just easily pick up. No, it's very deep. So you have to give yourself that, as I said, you have to give yourself time and creative energy.
Right.
And sustenance to keep at it, because you might not find the answer in the first month or two. It might take much longer. It's being able to work at it, continue with it.
So, as you know, most of our audience is based here in the US, and we have a lot of actually young dancers staying up to watch you tonight. And so, and a lot of them learn dance as a connection to their Indian roots, as well as sort of finding the affinity towards their Indianness, but some of them are really passionate about it, but very few of them take it up as a career. So do you have any words to share with them? Because there is this joy in learning the art form for the sake of it and not necessarily as a performer and things. So what would you say to them?
Everyone learning dance, of course, is a great it's a delight, it's a joy, it's excitement. It makes you feel happy. It makes you feel like when you start think you can do a whole Varnam and you go through it. It's a high. It's a high. But I think, for everyone to become professional artists, it's a very, very, very big step. And it doesn't happen in any field of dance. It could be classical ballet, it could be Bharatanatyam, it could be wherever. But yes, learning dance is terrific. Is terrific. And if by learning dance, there is something else that dance gives to your life, right? If through that you learn about nature, say, or through that you learn about, looking at things which you otherwise might not look at, observations. No, though I think there are other ways that dance can, affect your life and bring quality or bring enrichment.
Right.
Bring enrichment.
Mm.
As I said, I know in the diaspora, I've seen many classes, and and I know that teachers and out there in USA, wherever else, it's really difficult because they groom them up to the Arangetram. I know Arangetram seems to be a kind of culmination point, right? Because after that, they all go into working and they have
to college.
Yeah, to college, and it kind of moves on. I think the serious ones who want to continue even post that would perhaps have to form some kind of collective of dance where they can, I believe, if you can up your technique, if you can really produce sophisticated, interesting work, then it's important to get mainstream. Now, I know it's much easier said than done. It's very difficult to break into mainstream in any part of the world, very difficult. But I do believe classical dance has the potential. It's like, it has the potential. It's not that it can't stand mainstream with other dance forms, right? But it's a question of how creative this team is going to be, how creative. And I'm saying team because I think sometimes, ensemble work is appreciated more than group, than solo.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get a collective together, if those dancers really come through with some very creative work, with great technique and great presentation, then it could be possible. And I think it is necessary that Gen Next millennials, they do push into that. They should not be just left as dancers in the diaspora.
Right.
I don't think they all belong there. There's some people who belong there, which is fine, which has its own purpose of why people are teaching, why people are learning, what it brings to them, which has its own quality. But I think if you're looking further than that, I think dancers have to think very hard. The serious ones out there have to think hard. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think part of the mission here at IDEA is to help those kind of people who want to get about just being in the cultural part of it, right? And we want to create some sort of support system, find them professional mentors, because it is really hard, like you said, to break in. And we do have, opportunities to learn how to write grant writing and those kind of things, so they understand how to navigate the mainstream here in America. But then some like Kashi and others travel back and forth. They'll come to Chennai. They think so. It's happening, but it's harder and slower than if it were to be in India, because I guess opportunities there also are much more, maybe, or the competition is also so much more. I don't know. I can't speak too much about the Indian dance scene.
I would say that even in India, it's very, very difficult. There's some people are able to, differentiate themselves. But one thing I think America, USA has is that you have dancers getting grants. In India, this is not there. It's a very difficult situation. It's not, grants are not so easily available now, and I don't think the financial sort of sustenance you get is as good as it would be in USA. So I think dancers have a lot going for them in USA. At least to be able to get grants, because without fund money, where do you go?
Right.
That becomes like the basic step. But yes, a lot has to be done. And I really wish, the fire catches in dancers and they want to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I totally agree. It'll be so exciting. That's sort of like my mission. I want like the second, as part of IDEA and plus my thing, I want the second generation, like the next generation to take it forward. And part of IDEA's mission is also to make sure like mainstream organizations understand this as an artistic dance form. We're not, representatives of like cultural representatives. Don't invite us just because you want some Indian face there. Invite us because where art is showing up, that kind of like constant education, because that's also very important. I mean, when you're trying to build a diasporic art form in the mainstream, the understanding is part of the process, which then hopefully will sow the seeds for more. But it's happening. It's coming. It's coming. So, did you have anything else to share or ask? Any other questions? Oh, actually, I totally missed away. There are some other questions. Okay. She happens to be one of our students, Anisha Jairam. She actually lives in North Carolina. And she asked, how would you explain Bharatanatyam to someone who knows nothing about it?
How do you explain it, or how do you teach it?
No, she's, I guess, explain more to her non-Indian friends or audience. I guess she wants to see how she could articulate it. And that's what I'm
saying. I think that it's obviously a classical dance form, and that it really, its fundamentals are about symmetry and geometry and the positions, the obviously the feet positions that we have, and basically to say that it has, the pure dance, that we have two aspects, that we say the pure dance, explores outer space, the space around the artist, around the dancer. So it's about movement in space. And then we have the inner space of emotions, which is just so special to Indian dancing. That we have this constant, the outer inner, and that we're working with both these spaces. And that it's, it has this fascinating, I think, language of gesture, but something which we shouldn't get addicted to say that that's the only way we can express.
right.
But yes, it's a classical dance form which believes in stylization. I think that's important. That stylization is part of this art form. And also the symmetry of the movements, and the balance of the body. That's important as well.
I think there's a simpler way. Spend $10, watch the film.
Well, she already did. So she watched it today. So Daya asks, Malavika ji, what would you like personally or feel fulfilled in your performances, solo or group?
Or solo. Yeah, solo. I mean, I've done solo 50 years, so it's like my best friend.
In fact, I think it's very poignant that Sumantra takes the movie to that, like is your solo journey, the Mahishasura Mardini, like it's very, I love the juxtaposition of the thoughts of that in the movie. And Jumku,
to add to it, I think, for presenting Tari or working with a group, that gave me a very different idea, or it gave me another look into dance and dancing bodies, and the patterns that, dancing bodies can make, or what happens to space and time when we're using dancers. But I think what was very, which was very tiring, was just finding time with all these dancers, because they were not all training with me. They were from different gurus.
right.
So to get their time slots and put everybody together, I mean, that really wasted away a lot of my energy. So, that was okay for Tari. But then when I started dancing, when I did the Battle Within on the Bhagavad Gita, the next solo I did, it was such a relief, because I just had to work on my timings and, what whatever. And I really conserve a lot of my energy. So, if dancers are more readily available and excited to practice long months because I can't do anything in a short time, then I would be creating a piece again with group, but otherwise not. Solo is bliss.
So there's a question for Sumantraji, waiting to see what you come up with during this pandemic. So
more laziness.
Oh, no, we won't buy that answer.
No, as I said, I'm working on a series of films for a museum in Bangalore, which is actually the 3 films are available on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
You just have to go to map and type. It's called Articulate, the series.
Oh, okay.
So if you type in Articulate map, you'll have a talk there. We've just released the films on the 30th of March. That's an ongoing project. We'll carry on until they kick me out. And then there is, as I said, there's a book of Janisar Akhtar. There is Malavika's new project. So there's enough going. I must say that it's not as if I'm at a loose end. There's enough that's happening. And when I look at you today, Shruti, what strikes me because one is a filmmaker and one also works with poetry. What's amazing is your image, which is I've been transfixed by you, because what you don't realize is that there is a light behind your head which has created a constant halo.
I've been trying to block it.
So while you're blocking it, there is this halo around your head, which I've been transfixed by throughout this conversation. Because the positioning of the camera and that halo, because we're looking up at you as if as a superior being, and that superior being has a halo around her head. So these are things that I can't stop myself from thinking as a filmmaker, as a poet, as somebody who's involved in creativity. So why I brought this up is that process is ongoing all the time. When I'm looking at you at this moment, I'm seeing a goddess with a halo around her head. So it's very, it's a bit disconcerting to be able to focus on the answer when the only thing that's going on in my head is, look at that halo. I mean, how amazing. How would I get that effect if I was wanting to shoot? So anyway, it goes on. Those thoughts go on.
But I have a very lay answer for it. It's like, so this is our dining room and there's a mirror behind me and this is the best lit room in my house. So I have to pick this for our Zoom purposes.
But your camera angle has been very well fixed.
I'm glad I got that. So, okay. One thing from Sri Devi Jagannath, she says, Malavika Akka, you say, I don't call my shows performances, but an experience. Please share one of your unique experiences with us.
No, what? Can you read the question again? What is it?
It says I don't call my shows performances, but an experience. So they're asking you to share one of your unique experiences.
The reason I say this is that, it's not only about a show in the sense in a theater space. I'm saying even whether it's a rehearsal. It could be that you're dancing by yourself, or you have your musicians, or you're doing the, run through with them. When you can take dance, and though it's very repetitive, right? That's the whole thing about dance. It's very repetitive. You have to do it the same thing again. But when you start looking at it as experience, if you can take repetition and instead of just doing it without that full sense of awareness, if you can give it full awareness, then even the repetitive another energy. The sahitya that you're doing, the poetry that you're reliving, or is not something from the past, but it's something that you're able to create in the moment. So, for example, if you're doing, I'm trying to, as I said, express this with words. It's like if you're saying you're doing a nature description, Rather than just saying the hastras are going to suggest everything, can you truly feel it? Like I talk of treeness in the film, right?
Mhm.
Now, if you can bring that kind of intense quality to the living of the dance, living of your dance, whenever it is, it can just be rehearsal. Then it all starts changing into experience because you're going into much deeper levels of presence. So it's actually it's a more meditative experience, which is not only for the stage. Sometimes my rehearsals are much better than my performances, much better. It's a question of how it all comes together. But in a short point, it would say, when one dances anytime, can one give it the best we have at that? The best attention, the best focus, the best awareness, the best mindfulness. Can we give? Then it becomes experience. It becomes
Right.
experience. Anyone who wants to work with it like that is not something special to me. It's not something special I do on stage to make it an experience. No.
Right.
It's like how do you inhabit the dance? What do you do? What do you put of yourself into the dance? Which takes it away from being repetitive. I think that's it. But it would be easier dance than spoken about. One could
Yes.
actually dance.
Yes, definitely. Some experiences have just to be lived.
And there's some moments, in certain we call it performance, but there's sometimes when the intensity is so high and everything is just coming together. I would say, I don't know how many of you have seen the program I did. Again, this was a virtual program for the Federation of City Sabhas last year in December. I had done a program and I'd done a Margam, in the sense I'd done a Varnam as well. And I concluded with a choreography called Ras, which I've done for the last, I think, 25 years or so. But I know that day, the Ras that I did, some of you who have seen it, that had some other energy. How and why, I don't, but it had something. It was the moment, something which is poured in, it's like, how much of yourself can you give? How much of yourself can you surrender? It's another big topic in itself.
Yeah.
It's another day.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I know it's just, there's so much to be talked, explored, and, experienced. I think sometimes I feel like one life's not enough to live. So because there's so much always, and to do, learn, think. But I am so happy, honored that we could share this space. All our attendees have been so excited, glued to it. I'm actually very glad that we've had an intergenerational audience also here to be a part of this experience with both of you, and of course the movie. And thank you so much. Thank you very much for also waking up really early for us and being a part of this festival. And we definitely hope we can find different ways that we can bring you back through IDEA, and hopefully actually a live performance soon. And I would like to leave all of you tonight and this morning with actually Malavika Akka's words, which is, classical dance in a moment suggests the infinite. It's not just the beat of a beginning and end. It's a part of a much longer sequence, the unseen sequence, perhaps. And thank you, and good night, everybody in the US, and have a good day to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.